scientists have just recently discovered using ground-penetrating radar imagery. They found some 40 stones, about 3.5 to 4.5 meters wide.
Professor Vincent Gaffney, lead archaeologist on the Stonehenge Hidden Landscapes Project, University of Bradford, was staring at his monitor when the ground-penetrating radar returned something that shouldn't exist. 3 feet beneath the chalk bedrock, the electromagnetic pulses had mapped 17 massive structures that no one had seen in over 300 years of Stonehenge research. Then, the full image rendered. 20 enormous shafts arranged in a mathematically perfect circle spanning over a mile.
I think we've had almost a false understanding of Stonehenge, and because we haven't been able to see the whole picture.
Hidden passageways, buried chambers, an entire underground complex deliberately concealed beneath one of the most studied sites on Earth. Gaffney's coffee went cold, his team stopped talking, because what was glowing on that screen didn't just challenge what we knew about Stonehenge, it destroyed it. This is what they found, and the answer is more disturbing than the mystery ever was. The buried secret. The team had spent months scanning the landscape around Stonehenge, cataloging exactly the kind of results you'd expect. Old post holes, forgotten burial pits, textbook archaeology confirming textbook theories. Then they ran one final survey. The electromagnetic pulses penetrated the chalk bedrock and bounced back with evidence of the largest prehistoric structure ever discovered in Britain. Not a single researcher, across 3 centuries of investigation, had known it was there. Here's where it gets wild. When the team plotted every shaft position onto a coordinate grid, the pattern that emerged made seasoned archaeologists physically uncomfortable. 20 shafts, each one over 30 feet wide, 15 feet deep, carved straight into solid bedrock using tools that supposedly didn't exist 5,000 years ago. And they formed a perfect circle, not roughly circular, not approximately round, geometrically perfect, centered with surgical precision on Durrington walls, a ceremonial site 2 miles from Stonehenge. The kind of accuracy that modern surveyors would struggle to replicate without GPS equipment, positioning errors measured in inches across a structure spanning thousands of feet, in an age before metal, before writing, before the wheel. Dr. Richard Bates, geophysicist at the University of St. Andrews, ran the calculations over and over. He checked every measurement, recalibrated every instrument, hoping somewhere in the numbers he'd find a mistake. Something, anything, that would make this make sense within the framework of what we thought Neolithic people were capable of. He didn't find one. When he finally addressed the team, his voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. "This is unprecedented. Hunter-gatherers did not do this. Early agricultural communities did not do this. Someone with knowledge we don't understand did this." Now think about that for a second. This wasn't some rough ceremonial ditch scraped into soft soil. This was precision engineering carved into solid rock, on a scale that implies organizational capability, mathematical understanding, and construction logistics we've never associated with prehistoric Britain. The kind of project that requires centralized planning, specialized labor, and someone, or some group, with enough authority to direct all of it across what must have been decades of continuous work, 5,000 years ago, before any civilization in Britain was supposed to be capable of thinking this way. And get this? The shaft ring was just the beginning. When Gaffney's team expanded the radar sweep across the wider landscape, the subsurface images revealed at least 17 previously unknown structures surrounding Stonehenge. Massive timber posts that once stood in concentric circles, some as large as the standing stones themselves. Ancient pits arranged in deliberate geometric patterns mirroring celestial configurations. Processional pathways carved into the earth, designed to funnel movement toward the central monument like a vast ceremonial highway. The visible stones, they weren't the monument. They were just the center of something much, much larger. A design landscape extending for miles in every direction. And we'd been staring at the surface for 3 centuries, completely blind to what was underneath. But here's the deal. What the radar found directly beneath the stones themselves would prove even more unsettling than what surrounded them. The sound machine. For decades, visitors inside the stone circle reported something strange, a low vibration in their chests, an unusual energy they couldn't name, a feeling that the air itself was different once you crossed between the stones. Most researchers waved it off. Imagination, wishful thinking, tourists wanting to feel something magical at a famous site. They were wrong. Once scientists understood the scale of hidden engineering buried beneath Stonehenge, they started asking a completely different question about the structure above. If the builders designed underground features with this level of mathematical precision, what else had they engineered that every previous study completely missed? The answer came from Trevor Cox, professor of acoustic engineering at the University of Salford. In 2020, his team built a precise 1:12 scale replica of Stonehenge using 3D printed stones positioned with millimeter accuracy to match the original configuration exactly. They sealed it inside a specially designed acoustic chamber, zero external noise, zero interference, creating a perfect laboratory for measuring how sound actually behaved inside the ancient circle. What happened next made Cox stop the entire experiment. He recalibrated every piece of equipment in the room, checked every sensor, verified every setting, ran the tests again. Same results. Inside the stone circle, the reverberation time hit just over half a second. Voices became fuller, richer, more powerful, transformed into something that seemed to carry physical weight. Divine. Authority you could feel in your bones. Musical instruments resonated with amplified depth that wrapped around listeners from every direction. But the moment you stepped outside the ring, gone completely, like crossing an invisible wall between two different worlds. Here's the catch. Despite all those massive stone surfaces surrounding the interior, researchers detected almost no echo inside the circle. The inner stones disrupted reflections from the outer ring so precisely that sharp echoes were eliminated entirely. That doesn't happen by accident. That requires understanding. That requires intention. The builders knew exactly what they were doing. Archaeoacoustics researcher Rupert Till, senior lecturer at the University of Huddersfield, pushed it further. He discovered that some Welsh bluestones produce clear ringing tones when struck, like massive stone bells. The region they came from is traditionally called Maen Clocog, translation, ringing stones. Local folklore had preserved knowledge of their acoustic properties for thousands of years before modern science caught up. But Till's modeling uncovered something far more disturbing than resonant rocks. The specific stone arrangement generates infrasound, deep vibrations below the threshold of conscious hearing. You can't hear infrasound, but you feel it. Scientific research links infrasound exposure to powerful sensations of awe, unease, disorientation, and primal fear. The kind of fear that bypasses your rational mind entirely. The kind that makes the hair on your arm stand up. The kind that makes you want to drop to your knees without understanding why. And here's what makes this truly unsettling. These aren't effects that require belief. They aren't cultural. They aren't psychological. They're physiological. Your body responds whether you want it to or not. Whether you believe in anything mystical or not. Step inside that circle, and the frequencies do the rest. So here's the question that kept Till up at night. Were those frequencies an accidental byproduct of the stone arrangement? Or did the builders deliberately engineer a structure capable of manipulating human emotion without anyone inside ever realizing what was happening to them? The researchers couldn't prove intent, but the capability was clearly and systematically built into every carefully positioned stone. If ancient acoustic engineering fascinates you, subscribe now, because what they discovered about where these stones actually came from is about to rewrite everything we thought we knew about prehistoric Britain. The impossible journey. The acoustic findings blew open a door that couldn't be closed. If the builders understood sound manipulation at this level, what else had been catastrophically underestimated about their capabilities? The answer arrived in late 2024, and it detonated inside the archaeological community. Anthony Clark, geoscientist at Curtin University in Australia, had been meticulously analyzing the altar stone, the massive ceremonial slab positioned at Stonehenge's heart. Using high-precision mass spectrometry at the John de Later Center, his team examined tiny mineral grains trapped inside stone fragments, dating individual crystals, and measuring isotope ratios grain by grain. The results made Clark request a second analysis immediately, then a third. Then he brought in an independent laboratory for blind verification. The numbers came back identical, every single time. Some minerals dated between 1 and 2 billion years old. Others clustered around 450 million years. This unusual combination created a chemical fingerprint so distinctive it matched only one geological formation on the entire planet. The Old Red Sandstone of Scotland's Orcadian Basin, northeastern Scotland, over 700 miles from Stonehenge. Dr. Robert Ixer, research associate at University College London and one of the world's leading authorities on Stonehenge geology, had spent decades mapping the origin of every stone in the monument. He thought he'd solved it. When he saw Clark's data, he sat motionless for a long time. Genuinely shocking, he finally said. His voice was flat, drained. This changes everything we thought we understood about these people. And here's the deal. Moving a 6-ton sandstone block overland across ancient Britain? Virtually impossible. Dense primeval forests, treacherous marshlands, rivers with no bridges. The geology pointed to only one viable explanation. They moved it by sea. Neolithic engineers loaded a 6-ton stone onto specially constructed vessels and navigated hundreds of kilometers of dangerous rocky coastline, using knowledge of tides, currents, and celestial navigation that nobody believed existed 5,000 years ago. No metal tools, no written language, no technology we'd recognize as civilization. Just raw knowledge, brute human effort, and navigational skills that rival anything in the ancient Mediterranean. Let that sink in for a moment. We're talking about people who supposedly hadn't invented basic metallurgy yet, loading a stone heavier than a pickup truck onto a wooden vessel, and piloting it through some of the most treacherous waters around the British Isles, and arriving at their destination with the stone intact. And this wasn't a one-time miracle. The pattern repeated across the entire monument. Bluestones hauled from the Preseli Hills in Wales, massive sarsen stones dragged from the Marlborough Downs, sandstone shipped from Scotland, each material selected for specific acoustic, magnetic, or geological properties, each transported across impossible distances, requiring planning that spanned generations. Richard Bevans, National Museum Wales researcher who spent years tracing the chemical fingerprints of Stonehenge materials, put it bluntly. We're looking at a society with complex long-distance trade networks, advanced maritime capabilities, and organizational sophistication rivaling anything in the ancient Mediterranean world. 1,000 years before the Egyptian pyramids reached their peak. Let that sink in. But knowing where the stones came from only sharpened the real mystery. The question wasn't just how they moved these materials across Britain. The question was why they needed these exact stones from these exact locations. The answer was written in the stars, literally. The celestial code. Everyone knows Stonehenge lines up with the summer solstice. Tour guides have repeated that fact for generations. Every June, thousands gather to watch the sunrise pierce through the central axis. But here's what those tour guides never mention. That famous solstice alignment? It's the surface layer, possibly even designed to be obvious. A decoy to distract casual observers from the far more complex celestial code hidden underneath. When researchers combined the ground-penetrating radar data with astronomical modeling software, additional alignments emerge from the noise. The buried pathways, the timber post positions, the massive shaft ring at Durrington Walls, all demonstrated precise celestial orientations extending far beyond simple solar observation. These weren't rough guesses, they were dead on. Some features pointed toward major lunar standstills, rare astronomical events occurring on an 18.6-year cycle when the moon reaches its most extreme positions along the horizon. Now, think about what that actually means. Whoever designed this landscape was systematically tracking celestial patterns that took nearly 2 full decades to complete a single cycle. Someone was keeping records and passing them down through generations. Astronomical observation spanning multiple human lifetimes. Organized education, long-term institutional planning. Capabilities we never believed the Neolithic world possessed. The 2024 major lunar standstill brought researchers flooding to Stonehenge to document how moonlight interacted with the stones during this rare event. What they recorded confirmed it. The monument tracked lunar extremes with exactly the same precision it tracked solar ones. And get this, some stone positions pointed toward patches of the night sky with no obvious modern significance. Empty darkness. Meaningless. Until researchers reconstructed star maps from 5,000 years ago, accounting for Earth's axial precession, the slow wobble that gradually shifts stellar positions across millennia. Suddenly, those random alignments made perfect sense. The builders had encoded a precise map of the heavens as they appeared 5,000 years ago, a celestial snapshot frozen in stone. Dr. Amanda Chadbourne, senior prehistorian with Historic England and a specialist in Stonehenge astronomical alignments, described the moment she understood what the data meant. Her hands were shaking. We kept assuming they were primitive. We kept assuming they were making rough guesses based on casual observation. They weren't guessing at all. They were tracking celestial mechanics with precision we didn't believe was possible without written records and metal instruments. This wasn't a farmer's planting calendar. This was a sophisticated astronomical instrument, encoding observations that required centuries of systematic documentation to compile. But astronomical knowledge alone doesn't explain the acoustics, or the impossible stone transport, or the buried shaft ring. Someone had to coordinate all of this across centuries of continuous construction. And the question everyone had been carefully avoiding finally demanded a direct answer. Who had the power to command something this vast? The shadow rulers. The evidence pointed somewhere deeply uncomfortable, somewhere that challenged everything archaeologists wanted to believe about ancient cooperation and shared purpose. For years, the Romantic interpretation held. Scattered tribes from across Britain coming together peacefully. A shared sacred project. Willing collaboration toward a common spiritual goal. Beautiful story. The ground-penetrating radar destroyed it. The scale was too vast, the precision too exacting, the specialized knowledge too carefully controlled. Completing this monument and its surrounding landscape required thousands of workers laboring across not years, but centuries. Sustained, organized, directed. And here's the part that disturbed the researchers most. The radar surveys found no evidence of large permanent settlements anywhere near the construction site. Workers came from somewhere else. They labored under brutal conditions, following plans they didn't design, building to specifications they couldn't understand, then vanished when their service ended. They were organized, fed, housed, and directed by a system sophisticated enough to manage logistics that would challenge modern project managers with computers and supply chains. This wasn't cooperation among equals. This was commanded labor, industrial scale. Someone at the top gave orders. Everyone beneath obeyed. The mathematics pointed directly to a centralized ruling elite, a class possessing sacred knowledge that ordinary people completely lacked, jealously controlling access to that knowledge, and commanding absolute obedience across multiple human lifetimes. But wait, it gets worse. If that hierarchy existed, then the stones transported from distant regions take on an entirely different meaning. The ringing blue stones from Wales, the ancient altar stone from Scotland. These weren't gifts symbolizing unity. They were tribute, forcibly extracted from subordinate populations across hundreds of miles. Not signs of cooperation, signs of iron control stretching across the entire island. And Stonehenge itself, it may have been the primary weapon of that control. Think about it. A structure generating infrasound that triggers awe and primal fear below conscious awareness. Acoustic engineering, making voices inside the circle sound impossibly powerful, divinely commanding. Celestial alignments proving privileged connection to cosmic forces ordinary people couldn't comprehend. Inside that circle, surrounded by engineered frequencies, bathed in amplified sound, overwhelmed by emotions they couldn't explain. The rulers of Stonehenge wouldn't merely claim to speak for the gods. They would seem like gods themselves. Was this a deliberately engineered weapon of mass psychological control? A precision-built machine for manipulating the emotional state of everyone who entered, without a single person understanding what was happening to them? The evidence doesn't prove it, but it doesn't rule it out either, and the capability was systematically built into every stone. That's not speculation. That's documented physics. The revelation. Here's what makes this discovery truly terrifying. It's not any single finding. It's what happens when you lay them all on top of each other. A civilization that understood acoustics well enough to engineer a sonic environment, amplifying voices and generating frequencies that manipulate human emotion. A civilization that mastered maritime navigation to transport multi-ton stones from 3 different regions of Britain, each selected for specific physical properties. A civilization tracking celestial mechanics across 18.6-year lunar cycles and encoding 5,000-year-old star maps into stone alignments accounting for Earth's axial wobble. And a civilization powerful enough to command construction labor spanning centuries, with no written language, no metal tools, and organizational sophistication we didn't think existed outside the ancient Mediterranean. This wasn't separate achievements by separate groups. This was one coordinated system: sound, stone, stars, and human psychology, weaponized together inside a single monument. And here's the final piece that ties the knot. When researchers overlaid the acoustic data onto the celestial alignment maps, something clicked that nobody had anticipated. The processional pathways, the ones the radar found buried underground, didn't just funnel people toward the center of the monument. They funneled people in from specific directions at specific times of year, positioning them inside the circle at precisely the moments when celestial events would be visible through the stone gaps. The infrasound, the amplified voices, the moonlight or sunlight piercing through the central axis at the exact second the frequencies peaked. This wasn't a temple, it wasn't an observatory, it wasn't an instrument of political control. It was all 3 at once, functioning as a single, integrated machine designed to overwhelm every human sense simultaneously. No civilization in the ancient world was supposed to think this way. Not for another 2,000 years. Professor Gaffney returned to his research station months after the discovery. The data was verified. Papers published. The mystery that had defeated 300 years of researchers finally cracked open by electromagnetic pulses mapping what human eyes were never meant to see. But standing in front of those radar images, Gaffney didn't feel triumph. He felt something closer to dread. "We spent centuries assuming they were primitive," he said quietly. "We were wrong. They knew things were only beginning to rediscover, and they built something designed to last until we developed the technology to finally understand it." The stones waited 5,000 years. The ground-penetrating radar finally revealed what they were hiding. But here's the question that nobody, not Gaffney, not Chadburn, not a single researcher on any team, has been able to answer. If the builders designed Stonehenge to be understood only by a future civilization with advanced technology, what message were they encoding? What knowledge were they preserving in stone, sound, and starlight? And perhaps more disturbingly, what were they trying to warn us about? Some secrets wait for the right moment to surface. Maybe that moment is now. Or maybe we've only scratched the surface of what's still buried beneath those ancient stones. If this deep dive opened your eyes to how much we still don't understand about our ancient past, subscribe and hit notifications. More hidden histories are waiting, and the technology to uncover them advances every single day. The past isn't as primitive as we were taught. Sometimes it's far more advanced and far more unsettling than anyone dared to imagine.